Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Larrabee, and these are the continuation of your notes that you need to complete. And the first thing we're going to start out with here today is going to be um, one more of the agreed upon reasons you're going to add to your continued list. And this is a relationship of vertical angles. And just to review what vertical angles actually are, vertical angles are angles that are created by two lines or segments or rays that intersect and they are opposite one another. Okay, so I've outlined this proof already for us so that we can come to a logical conclusion about the relationship between all vertical angles. First off, we can see that angle 1 and 3 are linear pairs. You can also see that 2 and 3 are linear pairs. This is given to us just by looking at the diagram. We can assume straightness. And both of those angles, 1 and 3 and 2 and 3, well, they are adjacent angles that create a straight angle. So they are linear pairs. And the next thing we know is that all linear pairs are supplementary. And notice my reasons are always generally true. And my statements are all specific to the question I'm looking at. So I know that linear pairs imply there's supplementary angles. So what's true here is that we have two angles that are supplementary to the same angle. What that allows us to do then is to say, well, angle 1 and 2 have to be congruent because angles that are supplementary to the same angle, that implies that you have two congruent angles. So vertical angles are always going to be congruent. So put this in, add this onto your sheet of agreed upon reasons that we're going to use in our proofs. Now the questions here, there's 3 of them we're going to go through. I'm going to discuss them. I'm not going to write a formal proof. The next step after we get comfortable with proving that triangles are congruent will be actually to formally write a proof. But right now, we're going to say, all right, we have some information. Tx is congruent to Vw. So on my diagram, I'm going to mark Tx and Vw congruent. And then the result of the segment Tw bisecting Xv means that Tw is what's doing the bisecting, and that will split into two congruent parts because it's bisecting Xv. So now I have 2 more segments that are congruent. So we have already covered during class what the reasons be for us to say that these two triangles are congruent. Right now, we have a pair of sides congruent, another pair of sides congruent. That is not yet enough information for us to prove that these triangles are congruent. We need 3 pieces of information. But we also have segments that intersect, and we have vertical angles, right? And I just proved to you that all vertical angles are going to be congruent. So right now, I have a pair of angles. And the angle is not between the 2 sides, so this is going to be side angle. And this is not one of our reasons. Okay? So name the congruent triangles. Well, these are not congruent. Because side angle is not going to guarantee that we have congruent triangles. Okay, so there's really not much to do for that one. For the next one, we have the segment EB bisecting an angle AEC. So if I'm bisecting the angle AEC, that means I'm splitting that angle into 2 congruent parts. So my 2 congruent parts will be angle AEB and CEB. I'm also given that angle ABD, this outside angle, it's an exterior angle, is congruent to CBD. Well, that's not a lot of information. If I'm looking at my two triangles, so far I only have one pair of angles, right? Angle and angle. But based on these exterior angles being congruent, I also see that there's linear pairs to both of those angles. And if the exterior angles are congruent, which is in the given, then the supplementary angles to them will also be congruent. So I know that these angles will also be congruent because angles that are supplementary to congruent angles are congruent. So this is another pair of angles being congruent. So I have angle and angle, yet not enough information. There's one other piece of information that we want to write down in our notes and also add this on to your list of agreed upon reasons for our proofs. We wrote it out for you in the bottom paragraph, but here's what this says. The segment EB is a shared side to both of those triangles, meaning that whatever length EB is to the top triangle, then it's going to be the same length as it is to the bottom triangle. This is called the reflexive property. This means that something can be congruent to itself. This could be an angle, or this could be a segment, right? So you might want to also say shared sides or angles are congruent to themselves. So indeed, we do have another piece of information. I can mark a single segment congruent to itself. So now I have a pair of sides, and this is going to be angle, side, angle, because I see the side is between my two angles. It's also called an included side because it's included on both of the angles. So are these going to be congruent? Yes, absolutely. So my triangle congruency statement would be triangle, let's say EAB, and triangle. So what's going to correspond to E? E is going to correspond to E. Those will be corresponding parts. A is going to correspond to C, and then B is going to correspond to B. And the reason being, the angle, side, angle, you can say postulate, but angle, side, angle is enough for us right now to say that it's guaranteed those two triangles are the exact same size and shape, therefore congruent. All right, on this one, looking at two segments perpendicular, DB and AC. Well, perpendicular is going to imply that I have right angles. So I know there's going to be a right angle here and a right angle here. And all right angles are going to be congruent. So that's going to be one pair of angles. I know that the segment AB is congruent to the segment BC. And I know the segment AD is congruent to the segment DC. So here I have a pair of sides, and here I have a pair of sides. Now the angle is not between the two sides, because if it was, it would be right here. But that is not where my angle is. So this case right now is side, side, angle. But we know that is not one of our agreed upon reasons. However, because this is a right, both of these triangles are right triangles, meaning they have a right angle, I know for sure this is a special case of side-side angle. This is called hypotenuse leg, because I have two hypotenuses of right triangles congruent, and I have two legs of a right triangle congruent. So therefore, these two triangles will be congruent. So ADB is congruent to, A is going to correspond with C, D is going to correspond with D, and B is going to correspond with B. And the reason being the hypotenuse leg. All right, those are your continued notes, and it's just some examples for you to kind of think about and take good notes on. Make sure they're quality notes, because on Wednesday you're going to have a Desmos activity that's going to take you through several of these types of questions where you're just going to be marking the diagram. You'll be able to do that on Desmos, and then also determine are the two triangles congruent and what's the reason.